Hello, Internet, and welcome once again to the Free-to-Play cast brought to you by MMOBomb.com, your home for all things free-to-play related. I'm Mike Byrne, aka Magicman, your host for today. This is episode 196, recording on September 29th. We're recording on Thursdays from now on due to a back-end scheduling with some of the hosts, and airing on Friday, September 30th or later. So expect that to be the schedule for at least the next term. Hey, Zach Sharps, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I know you're not doing that great though.
I'm not feeling well, but we'll get through it.
If Mike just randomly rushes away, that he'll respawn. It's okay.
Yeah, if it goes like a still camera on Jason for 15 minutes and it's just quiet, you'll know what happened. I'll be back.
Yep.
Also on the line, Jason Winter. What's up, Big Daddy?
Big news today. I tried Sonic for the first time.
As in the fast food chain?
Yeah, the fast food chain. Had some corn dogs, some tater tots. Good stuff.
How'd that go?
I'm not the one rushing away to go to the toilet, so obviously it's still okay.
You will be in 45 minutes, so let's hurry up and go to the news. All right, lots of smaller news again before we get to one or two bigger things, so let's start another mini rapid fire round. The viewers kind of like that. The rapid fire round. Lots to comment on. So let's start with one we don't really talk about all that much, even though I dabble in it. Although I can't honestly tell you the last time I played. It's been a while for this one. Ion 5.1, bringing 6 new dungeons in instances for players levels. Here we go, Jason. Level 66 and up. So just get to level 66. And you too can take part in the fun stuff. Most of it is 6-player dungeons, and I actually brought this one up just to get your initial thoughts on it because it kind of references something we're talking about later. But they're also adding Rift of Oblivion, which is a single-player dungeon, taking players back in time before peace negotiations and stuff. So lots of story involved. But you got to be level 66, so it's one of those catch-22s again where you develop for your end game, but as your player base gets smaller and smaller and smaller, over time, you're developing to a smaller and smaller percentage of people you're actually hoping play the game. However, Ion, I enjoyed it, didn't like the grind initially. They did a lot of stuff to try and change that with the fast track servers and stuff here in the East and changing questing, and to a great extent they have improved that, but it is still basically the same thing. You just get more experience for various quests and things like that. Big fan of new dungeons. I like the idea of a solo dungeon. This update, I kind of dig it, but I'm not at level cap, so I won't personally be enjoying any of this. Zach, your sharps. Zach, your thoughts?
I was like, wait, what?
Medication, man. Medication.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so Ion's a game that I always like to see what it's doing, but it's not a game that I hop into anymore just because it feels really, really old.
No, he didn't go to IHOP. He went to Sonic.
Ion. I said Ion.
No, you said I hop into.
No?
Oh, this is not a game I hop into.
He went to Sonic,
I see.
Wow, that took way too long.
Okay.
All right,
Good
continue.
But yeah, it's a game that I really think that a lot of people should definitely hop into at least to try out. But it's a game that also it feels pretty old. It's dated at this point, and that mainly is because of the fact that it went for somewhat of a more I guess say realistic fantasy type graphic art style, and that was a long time ago in CryEngine 3, so it's definitely feels dated, but everything that they're doing with it's great, at least that I've been seeing, so yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely got its own little following, Jason. It's not dead by any means, but as far as going away. Although there's also the big difference, though, in publishers. We have NCSoft here in the West, and Gameforge, who has less than a stellar reputation in Europe, carries Ion for them. So there's a lot of, it really depends on where you are, as if for me to be able to even recommend the game to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, at least you're still getting that same content, I assume, no matter what, even if you have to, I don't know, how
the release schedule usually differs a little bit, but
sure.
for the most part, you're getting it at around the same time.
Yeah, and I can actually remember, too, I think it was at PAX East, the one time I went to, like, 2011, and I went to the NCSoft presentation, I had a little room set up there, and they were going to get to Guild Wars 2, because that's what I cared about, that's what everyone cared about, practically, but they showed off Ion stuff first, and I was like, this actually looks really good. They were showing off some new dungeons, some different stuff they were doing. So, I mean, they could still produce some pretty high-quality stuff, I think, there for those end-game dungeons. Just as you said, It's all at max level, which that's where your hardcore players are, so it makes some sense to appeal to them more so. And the ones who, they aren't there yet, you're expected to probably just, motor your way up through. I only got to like level 13 or so before I quit.
Oh,
That's
wow.
as far as I could last. Because I kept hearing, no, wait, you get a few more levels. That's when the cool stuff happens. The usual whatever. So, but I mean, it looks like it's going to be some good content though if you're really into it. And there's got to be a way to purchase a max level character, right?
I was
Every game have
actually
that?
I was just looking at that while Zach was talking about an ion level boost or something. They certainly have the experience potions. And under the gun like this, I'm not finding a boost item itself, but I am finding multiple experience potions, and it is a pretty big cash shop, so it might take a little bit. Let us know in the
Huge
comments
cash shop.
if there's a boost there, and this is Game Forges that I'm looking at too. So let's go to NCSofts and see what we got here.
I think they've offered it at some point, maybe like as a part-time bundle or something. Maybe it's not a permanent thing.
I think they have like a somewhat of a small boost, especially if you already have higher level characters, but I can't remember exactly what level it is or if that was only a temporary thing.
I always liked what they did though with their at least in the West, their cash shop, where you had that the box and whatever you could fit in it, you could get
the
for
cube.
The Black Cloud Marketplace, the cubes. I always did like that. So okay, here we go. Here's boost. XP/drop, title cards, gathering, stat boost, transformation, or AP. So let's go to XP, because I guess that's as close as we're going to get. And yeah, plenty of experience boosting items, but I'm not seeing real quickly here just an item.
Yeah, but then you still have to play. God, who wants to do that? Give me my max level now.
Now, I did want to talk about something in particular here, and that is the solo dungeons. We're going to save that for a topic a little further down. I will just note here that to me, and maybe it's different for you guys, Ion was the first MMO RPG I played that actually featured solo or duo dungeons. Now, there's always been those little off-solo things in different games, but these were actual dungeons for solo or two-man groups. Jason, you obviously never made it to that stuff. Zach, did you do any of that content? Or?
I actually really love that stuff because you actually had to strategically plan pulls out. It wasn't just go in and just destroy everything. Like there were other games, I can't remember their names off the top of my head, that came before Ion that had solo stuff, but it was never challenging like what was in Ion. And I think that was mainly just because Ion in general, when I played it, was very challenging in terms of just leveling and progression and this content in general. So I really love the solo content in that game, and I'm glad that they're adding more. So
I want to say that Lotro did that too, right around the time, late 2009, when they introduced skirmishes. They made them multiple different group sizes and so on. So it's
and I'm by no means claiming Ion did it first. It just happens to be the first game that I played them in, that I personally played them in. And since we talked about a game that Jason couldn't care less about, I have backed it up on the show notes here with a game that Jason does care about. What's going on in Lord of the Rings Online? Oh my God. Mordor? Wait, Mordor?
Whoa.
What?
Yeah,
what? Jason, what's going down?
I care less about it than I have in the past. But anyway, yeah, they did their new producer's letter. The producer got in and talked about all the different things that they had planned for the future, which included update 19, which is coming very shortly. Going to have kind of sort of almost the last chapters of the books when Aragorn and everyone else kind of went to Mordor, tried to challenge Sauron right at the Black Gate, that sort of thing. They haven't gotten, I haven't played for so long, so I don't even know where the epic story is. I think it's mostly followed Aragorn and them. I don't think they've gotten really into the Mordor stuff with Frodo and Sam and Gollum running around in there, but that is something that they talked about maybe doing in the future, maybe with a full expansion, either later this year or not later this year, I guess, but probably sometime next year. So finally, I mean, we were talking about this since, again, when we were playing back in 2008 or so, we're like, what if we going to get to Mordor? It's like, oh my God, it's finally here, and nobody I play with still plays or cares anymore. So
here's what I like about this, though. Like, Lord of the Rings Online, to me, has always had, it's probably the only MMO that actually has a very defined, logical place to end the game. Like, not just shut the game down and we're not doing it anymore, but there's, like, actually, if you space this out correctly, by the time the tech is out of date, we don't have the license, whatever would we don't have the player base, whatever caused the game to shut down, boom, you just drop the end of the story. And so I kind of dig that. But if they're talking possibly full expansion, that license is up at the end of next year, and it's still a question mark on what's going to happen.
They said something a little while ago. They dropped a little thing about maybe something into 2018. So I don't know. Maybe they could extend it a little longer just to give people a little more closure for the end of things. I don't know.
So kind of hey, we need 6 more months. We need 9 more months.
we can't put out the expansion in like mid-December 2017 and then close down the game 2 weeks later. Give us a little longer. Yeah,
right.
Maybe.
That might rub people the wrong way, Zach. Zach, were you ever into Lord of the Rings Online?
I tried to be, but back then I had a really terrible PC that only really could run World of Warcraft and other smaller games that ran a bit better than Lotro at that time. And so I never really got full into it. And then when I eventually did, it felt a bit outdated in terms of graphics for me, so I wasn't really able to get into it. That said, as far as everything else the game has to offer, I really liked what they were doing with it. And I wish that if they made a Lotro 2, I would buy that for $60, or if they just made me pay $60 for a graphics revamp, I would hop in it, probably buy all the DLC, and probably get a couple hundred hours in that game. It's just, for me, it's really hard to play games that look outdated because they went for a particular art style, and it just aged really badly.
There have been multiple times when and Jason knows, he
always
tweets me every time they're on sale. Pick it up. No, Jason, I'm not gonna. Maybe I will. No, I still have not. They always put like the big packages together. It's just one of those MMOs for me that I'm like, I know I would like this, and I've played Lord of the Rings Online, not anywhere near to the extent that Jason has, but enough to get to like the 30s and 40s levels. And this was back when that was actually, not the beginning of the game. Now that's not even halfway through. But it's just one that, you really need a fellowship. You need a fellowship of friends playing it, and I just did not know enough people to stay with it.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the bundles, because every time I see a bundle, sometimes I'll actually boot it up and play it, and I'll play it for a little while. I think my highest level character is like 35 or 40, and I just can't play it that long.
Jason, I must have rolled 3 or 4 different characters and immediately killed them off just to see how far I could take that leveling without dying achievement.
Oh, jeez. I've never actually gotten that. I never made it to 15 without dying.
I made it to 15, but probably not much further than that, so... all right, moving on. Generally, I'm pretty positive about this game, but this feature could just suck my... Never mind. Just Rift is taking the headline is taking the fight to the plains with planar assault adventures. So if you're a Rift player, you know about instant adventures where you can just kind of queue up and it randomly throws you in a zone for you to do back-to-back things very quickly with whoever else may be instant adventuring. And it's a nice way to level quickly and just kind of be thrown into an area and go do some things without having to visit quest hub after quest hub after quest hub. I like the idea in theory. And I've used it to level characters. However, in the next expansion, Starfall Prophecy, they're adding planar assault adventures, and these are kind of a new spin. Not really a spin, but they're billing it as a new spin on the IAs, available to anybody who bought the expansion only. And rather than putting you into instant adventures that already exist, these ones take you to the planes of fire, the planes of life, and you're kind of beating up on things to disrupt rifts before they happen into Lara, which I kind of like lore-wise, but basically all you're tasked with doing is fighting waves of enemies in order to prevent them from launching an invasion, and you get some rewards. So to me, it's just yet another grindy type item in a game that already suffers from a lot of grindy type things at this point. And maybe I'm just being negative about it. Everybody watching this show knows I'm generally silver lining about Rift. I enjoy the game. This feature's just not for me, Jason.
To me, it almost makes more sense lore-wise than the current Rifts, because if you think about it...
You're always on the defensive currently.
Well, if you think about it, though, you don't want an invasion of your territory. If you're like living somewhere, I don't want to see people coming down the street here and coming and trying to kill me. I would rather go to their territory and kill them there. See, as opposed to
says the Texan.
Well, because in an MMO, you want that stuff to happen so you can get the loot and the prizes and whatever. So you actually go out and hope. Oh God, I hope monsters come down from the sky and start trying to kill everybody. No, you shouldn't really want that. You should go to their place and kill them instead.
Well, that's like I said. I like it lore-wise. I just don't like it as a feature, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, lore-wise, it makes sense. I mean, obviously, you want to be able to try and quell these rifts from spawning in the real world, but when it really comes down to it, unless they incorporate a lot of like bosses and just really intricate fights within these particular, I guess you could say, adventures, it's not really gonna feel special at all. And I feel like with rifts in general, at least initially out in the world and the invasions, that did feel special because there was a lot of random stuff that would pop up that would feel different. But after a while, it just became a grind fest. So depending on what they incorporate along with the system and how the system is going to be used to progress your character, and basically build out the depth of your character, that could be a big determinant of whether or not this feature is good or not. But lore wise, it's great.
Moving on, we got a little taste of what Revelation Online's gear system is going to look like, and guess what? It looks like everything else. I mean, I don't know what you want me to say there. I'm actually looking forward to Revelation Online. I know a lot of people are. I know that there's big aspects of the game that are just run-of-the-mill MMORPG things, which we're going to talk about shortly. Cloth, leather, plate, 5 different types of rarities. Gear has stats, and so you want to be specific on what stats you put on your specific class. So I don't think any of us were really shocked by the news of how they're going to work gear in the game, Jason.
I was shocked to see that you had 5 basic stats and 33 secondary parameters.
Yes, that was kind of a big
Wow.
number. That was kind of a big number.
I
And
look forward to their update in 2 or 3 years when they reduce that to like 6 secondary numbers.
Well, that's the other thing, too. This is my.com, so there's, concerns about how they're going to handle the cash shop. There's already some questionable items in the game overseas that, maybe aren't going to work as well here. And we saw what happened with Skyforge and its stats and its cash shop and its limits that now, a year and a half or so later, they're, Xing a bunch of those things off the list here. So it'll be interesting to see if they learn anything from Skyforge and apply it to the launch of Revelation rather than fix it a year down the road, Zach.
Yeah, I kind of agree. The 33, it makes no sense. I mean, honestly, when it comes down to it, there's only going to be certain ones that people really look out for. And so eventually they're going to have to tune it down so that way new players aren't like completely overwhelmed. And when we look at systems within like this gear in general, there's not a whole lot you can do with gearing in MMOs. There is some special things you can do, like with World of Warcraft did with Legion, with the artifact weapons, that makes the game feel different and play different in terms of how you progress your character. But in the end, you're still going to be wearing gear. You're still going to have weapons. You're still going to want to get better weapons, whether that means grinding particular stats or whatever the case may be. I honestly think that Revelation is going to be a good game. I kind of think of it as Ion 2.0, as much as some people may not like that. The game, because it has wings, immediately makes me think Ion. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. I got a closed beta key, so I'll be checking it out in October whenever that occurs. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one too. And the gear stuff, wasn't good news or bad news to me. It was just, okay, you're going to do what pretty much most other games do with your own little tweaks here and there, and I'm fine with it. My only concern right now is my.com. Let's see what they do with it. All right, moving on out of the rapid fire round into something a little more meaty. Evolve. If you have been living under a rock and you don't know that Evolve went free to play and into a beta on Steam a few months ago, it had no cash shop of any type when Jason did the first look, but details on where the cash shop is going to be headed and where it's going to start from have emerged this past week. Jason, what's the lowdown?
All right, so they're going to have now something called gold keys, which is what you buy with real money. And you can use those just like in most games to just unlock stuff faster. There isn't really any kind of advancement, I think, in Evolve in terms of like, you get a better gun that does more damage. It's all pretty much different characters having different abilities or the monsters having different abilities and so on. Mostly you level that stuff up during the game, so it's not any sort of pay to win or whatever. You do have some abilities that different characters, or I think just the monsters have the abilities. Anyway, you buy those during the match as well. You could buy them with the silver keys beforehand. I imagine you can get them with gold keys now, but it's still something you can get, either way. So it's overall a decent system, not unlike what we're used to in a lot of games. And they had to do something at some point to start making money on it. Good that they kept it for as long as they did, to just test things out for a while and get the gameplay right before they dipped right into asking for money.
Yeah, I kind of like the slow and steady approach that they're taking here, Zach. And the way they put it was that they're not drinking from a fire hose when they do their first little dabble into microtransactions. Because this isn't a company that's historically known for free-to-play, and so they're trying to figure out and make sure that they don't... The last thing Evolve needs right now is any form of pay-to-win type impression, even if it's not pay-to-win itself, but people get the impression. I think free-to-play has been a great thing for this game. It should have been at launch, and everybody said that. I think free-to-play has been a great thing here, and you got to make money. We're all okay with that. Just do it the right way, and I kind of like this slow approach they're taking to it, like dip their toe in the water to check the temperature, Zach.
Yeah, I certainly like where they're heading with it. Free-to-play obviously was the correct move for Evolve. And when it comes down to as far as people worrying about maybe progression, and also pay-to-win elements with this particular feature being implemented. When it really comes down to it in Evolve, there are particular characters that do fare better with different type of monsters at play. So there is different metas to counter particular monsters. So when it really comes down to it, yes, there is maybe a cause for concern. Oh, well, someone could just buy up all the characters, but at the same time, they're so easy to unlock. And if they didn't slow that process down, there's not really a big concern there. And until you reach a certain level, you can't even do rank to begin with. So there's not really that competitive element that is in that particular scenario either. So you don't really have to worry about that. I think this is a good move. I really saw this sort of coming from a mile away when the game initially launched. I'm like, oh, they're just going to make that, real money. They're going to make that real money. And it never bothered me because the initial progression was fine. Now, if they slow that down, then there's a big issue, and that's something we'll just have to wait and see over time. If some people do data mining and figure out, oh, well, they just increased it 20%, and now you have to grind 20% more to get, type like character A or character B. But I don't think they're going to do that. It seems like they're being very well reasoned with this, and they're really trying to make sure that they don't break the game by making it pay to win or very, very steeply pay to progress.
I was actually impressed they waited this long. I mean, it was kind of one of those things, Jason, we knew it was going to... You got to put a cash up in there, obviously. They got to make money, no problem with that. Just our question was, how are they going to implement it? The game is ripe for cosmetic stuff, but is that going to be enough to make money long-term for them? Is it going to be profitable in the end? And it's been months since this went free-to-play, and we're just getting the initial builds of cash shops now.
Yeah, I wonder if, due to all the money that they made, I mean, it did pretty well initially, right? The initial sales, even though people kind of shit on it afterwards. I thought it did.
I'm fairly certain it did, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I wonder if they made all that money and got that from the DLCs, and they were like, well, we can kind of afford to run this on our own dime for a couple months. And also, not only that, but also to generate enough goodwill, get people into it and have them, feeling it and enjoying it without having to worry about the money. And then we'll put that in there once people like it and have gotten addicted to it and so on. So maybe that was a little bit of the strategy too. Sort of a loss leader in a way.
According to Wikipedia, so asterisk, Evolve debuted #1 in the UK software sales. The first 2K games had published to take a #1 spot since 2013, and it was the second best-selling game in the United States in February, only behind The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D remake, and then it just kind of went way down from there.
Yeah.
So like a smaller version of No Man's Sky.
Wow, the comments. We're going to skip that. Hey, good luck to them. I like the way they're implementing this so far. Kudos to them, and I hope it's profitable for them.
It's interesting to note, though, that on the Steam page, their recent and their overall are virtually the same in terms of
their reviews.
Approval, yeah. 66% overall, 67% recent.
All right, I wanted to get into, before we go to the bombs here, some things. We talk about a lot of news and, well, we would like this or we would do this. And most of the viewers that are longtime viewers of the free-to-play cast for the last 5 years or so, they kind of generally know what games we're into or what genres we're into or things that we like and dislike about certain games. Everybody that watches this show knows Jason Winter hates shitty inventory systems, for instance. And so you wrote an article this week that I want to touch on the article first, but then I want to kind of go through and just touch on a few things and maybe give the viewers a better impression of the types of things we like and some certain games that maybe we think do certain things well. By all means, this is not our favorite MMOs. We're talking about more specific things like individual systems. So first up, your article this week, Jason, which I really enjoyed. Rift is adding another thing that you farm up.
There, Mike. It's okay.
Adding yet another thing that you farm up. Excuse me. Planar fragments, so that you can kind of swap your gear back and forth from a DPS spec to a tank spec to a healing spec without having to carry all these multiple sets of gear around. And an initial, like, I understand why they're doing it. The system's probably a bit outdated to just put in what we would think of as a better system to do this at this point if we were designing an MMO. So they kind of maybe got stuck with building on the systems that they had, and this was the best they could come up with. But it seems a little overly complex for me. And you kind of took that idea and started talking about gear management, class management as a whole across MMOs and put together your own couple of thoughts there.
Yeah, it's not that I necessarily dislike or am totally against the notion of, okay, if I'm going to have I have to have my tank gear and I have to have my DPS gear and I have to have my healing gear. The issue is that all these games will go out and say, hey, you can switch a role with a push of a button, or your character can play 8 different roles in combat or whatever. It's so easy, it's immediate, it's instant. But then you have to have all this stuff. You have to make sure all the gear is right. You got to make. A lot of games have 15 to 20 pieces of gear between your 6 pieces of armor, your cloak, a couple of rings, earrings, back piece, weapons, pocket item, whatever, all this other stuff, and that becomes. Maybe you made one part of it easier, but this part is like 10 times harder by the fact that you have to have all this different stuff for all the different builds you want to have, to the point that I don't even really do that anymore. I mean, I play Guild Wars 2 a lot. I could, fairly easily swap out my traits in my build panel to switch from a DPS to a tanky mode or whatever and so on. But then I'd have to have different gear to make it better. I'd have to change my gear with good hit points and survival skills into stuff with DPS and crit, and it's like I don't want to have to farm all that stuff up because, not only do I have to keep it all in my inventory, but the work it requires to have all those different gear to do the dungeons, do the crafting, whatever I would need to get all that. I just don't even bother with it. So I just wish that there was something more like what a lot of games have for their cosmetic systems. Once you get it, you unlock it, you can just kind of do a pull-down menu, poof, you're wearing something different. I'd like to see something like that for gear as well, to make it that easy to switch out your different roles, the different stats you have on your gear, just to make it a little more in line with the kind of promises you hear regarding how easy it is to switch roles in MMOs.
You just don't want it to take up bag space.
Well, that too. That's also a big point of it as well.
Zach, what do you think?
I agree with Jason, at least in regards to one gear set per spec. If you think about a lot of games, they usually have 3 different roles, like tank, healer, DPS, as Jason mentioned. So have one dedicated gear set that you could switch out different pieces of gear on the fly, and then just when you switch specs, it automatically applies that gear to your character, and it's not in your bag. That's I think the max that I would do, just because I do like the realistic aspect of you're not able to carry a absolute crap ton of stuff, even though in most games you're still able to, in returns of minerals and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's something that I definitely think could be better. A lot of spec and class switching and just respecking in general just needs work in general, just to make it balanced and appropriate for different types of meta scenarios where you need a particular type of healer, but you can't choose 3 or 4 different types of healers because they're not spec'd correctly because it's not balanced correctly. So there is different things that I would definitely work on in that regard.
Yeah, to me, this one kind of hinges on there's a delicate balance between customization / flexibility and a system that works nicely with doing what we're talking about doing here. And I'm going to bring up Final Fantasy XIV here for a second. Most of the classes in Final Fantasy XIV are strict, dedicated classes. Now, there are some that tread lines between DPS and healer or tank and DPS, but for the most part, it's if you roll this particular class, you're going to be range DPS. If you roll this particular class, you're going to be a tank. There's a little bit of crossover, but not much. So there's a limiting of customization there. That's kind of offset, though, by allowing your character to play any of the classes at any given time. So that versatility that is not in the classes has been extrapolated out onto the character. And as far as the gear goes, I think they do this relatively well. I hate Final Fantasy XIV's inventory system right now, the size of it and all that. And there's a lot of changes coming in the next expansion to address that stuff. But there is one thing that I think they do sort of well, but it doesn't negate the big problem, Jason, that you're talking about on you got to go find the gear and farm it all up. Where I do like the idea of a wardrobe system for actual gear, not just cosmetic. If I find it once, I don't have to save it anywhere. If I ever want to throw it on, it's in a panel of a list somewhere and go and put it on. But Final Fantasy has a secondary inventory called your armory set. And each slot of gear, like headpieces, you can carry 25 of them in the headpiece spot and 25 chest pieces and stuff like that. When you play a class, you can lock in that gear set. And so it literally is a switch of a press of a button. You open up your class panel, you click the class you want to play, and it immediately swaps your abilities, your hotbars, and all of your gear to whatever you've previously just clicked update gear set on. And you sub out a piece of gear, update the gear set again, just a click of a button, and you're good to go. So I do like that versatility, but I still got to carry them all, and eventually I do run out of armory space for whatever reason with all the crafting and gathering. We're talking about tons and tons of classes. So yeah, I really like the idea of the cosmetic armory that World of Warcraft uses, that just being, or even WildStar, or an insert game here that you've seen this on. I like that being if I get that rare drop, boom, it's automatically there, and I can equip it on my character at any given point. I like that idea.
It just seems to me like it's a concept that a lot of MMOs have come up with. They said, people didn't like, if I have a tank character, I have to level up another toll guy to make a DPS character. They realized people would rather maybe have the ability to do multiple builds on the same character. So they implemented that part, but they're lagging behind with the other aspects of it because those are something that nobody's done yet. It's going to take one company to do it and do it well, which, like you say, 14 has done it a little bit, but kind of has some issues with it. Once somebody does that and it becomes normal, and a lot of people are used to it in that game, and then when they switch over, they're going to go to some other game and go, why don't you do this? And then they're going to be like, oh, maybe we should have, or we'll do it, or whatever. So
yeah, if it's good enough, Blizzard will steal it at some point.
That's true, yeah. It just needs to be the new normal, just like the whole class, the whole role switching thing is kind of accepted now.
All right, so where do you guys stand on PvE? Specifically here, I want to talk about like dungeons, raids, that type of thing. What games out there in the free-to-play world, or even in the not free-to-play world, do dungeons and raids particularly well, in your opinion? Zach?
So basically what I would love to see is a mix between Darkfall's open-ended gameplay and progression, and how they just handle everything in terms of like classes and stuff like that, where pretty much anyone could be anything. And then sort of mix that in with the Elder Scrolls Online's dungeons and its sort of progression past sort of what would be sort of a soft cap in some regards in terms of your progression. Because I always loved going into Elder Scrolls Online. The reason why I'll come back to it next year when there's more dungeons, because the dungeons are really fun to play. They're intricate. You know when you die and for what reason. It's very easy to sort of be like, oh, that killed me or that killed me, and you're able to sort of speak with your group and have an organized group where you could sort of figure out how to progress to that dungeon without having to look up a guide or anything. And I love that aspect of it, where some games you just randomly die and you're not really sure why until you look at some combat text or you look at online for a particular guide. And so if you were to mix that with Darkfall's open-ended PvE system, but definitely refine Darkfall's open-ended PvE system and sort of make it somewhat like Albion Online, which is why I'm so hyped for that game, then that's definitely where I would sit in terms of PvE. Combat-wise, it needs to be sort of Terra Online, but way more smooth, way more fluid, way more sort of like Devil May Cry in terms of how that feels, and not sort of locked down and, I guess you could say, technologically held back as Terra currently is.
What do you think about a Blade and Soul type combat then?
It's way too soft targeting.
You don't like that aspect of it? As far as the fluidity and speed is more what I was...
The fluidity and speed definitely, but the soft targeting is definitely a problem.
I'm gonna go with more traditional stuff. I like traditional dungeons and raids. Ion, obviously, which we've already talked about. I love solo dungeons and duo dungeons. I know that's kind of counterintuitive, and Jason laughs at me a lot for that because it's an MMO RPG, and you want to go do something like a dungeon solo. But I love traditional tank, healer, DPS. That's why I hated Guild Wars 2's dungeons when it first launched. I hated it. Hated them. Hated them.
They aren't much better.
Yeah, they were just huge clusterfucks to me, and I didn't like them. So I'm gonna go with things like Ion to stick to free to play. Obviously, Final Fantasy 14, World of Warcraft, those dungeons, those types of raids. I like it. I'm more of a traditional MMORPG guy, I guess. Jason.
It occurs to me while we're talking about this, I'm just like, when is the last time I really like ran dungeons as a regular thing?
Oh, I love them.
And I mean,
that's my thing.
That's the thing is, I haven't done one in Guild Wars 2 in probably at least 6 months. I actually did one in SWTOR like a couple weeks ago, and it was kind of fun. But I mean, I almost think, I sort of agree with you when we were talking about LOTRO a little while ago and the different size of duo dungeons and whatever. And I like that aspect of what they have with their, not so much with the dungeons, but with the skirmishes, with the other things they have, having the multiple sizes on that. I remember doing that. And if you had 6 people, you could do it. If you had 3 people, you could do it. 2 people. We did it raid stuff. You did 12 people sometimes, and that was fun. I think that's got to be a notion. That's got to be something I wish a lot more games would be able to implement. Is being able to do it with a specific size or whatever you guys have, whatever you can fit into it. That would, I think, help a lot of people play more dungeons and do more of the interactive multiplayer stuff. They weren't always tied to, we got to have 5 people, 10 people, 12 people, whatever. I think that would be a big help.
On the flip side of things, let's talk about questing. I kind of bashed Guild Wars 2 for its dungeons. To me personally, I really enjoyed the way they handled questing as far as the leveling experience goes. I like the idea of things being out in the open, feeling a little more immersed in the world than quest hub to quest hub, which I still like. I will still... for crying out loud, we were talking about Riders of Icarus earlier, and that's all that is hub. But I probably give this one in my book on the free-to-play side to something more akin to a Guild Wars 2, maybe a little more immersive there. It was kind of just walk up and somebody said something, and there you go. Maybe a little more action-y as far as that goes, with that kind of thread of a main story quest going through the entire thing, Jason.
Yeah, I still think I like Guild Wars 2 in the way they generally do things. I've been a little down on the new zones they put out. They just seem kind of small and too easy to get through everything. And I think that's maybe the issue now is you just need to, if you're going to have that, it has to not seem repetitive that you're doing the same events over and over again. And maybe just I've been playing Guild Wars 2 for so long it feels like that. Whereas now I go and like I said, I play SWTOR a little bit, and it's like, oh, I know this is just a, kill 10 Imperials quest, but I've never done it before. And people are going to talk to me. I'll get to make little decisions in the text, and that just feels new and fresh to me. I almost think that's just what it is. That's how questing is going to be. That's how it becomes good for you in a lot of games. It's when you try something new and different as opposed to a game you've been playing for years.
Zach?
Yeah, just to touch on dungeons really quick, I think honestly 4 players is like the perfect happy medium. And I that's why I really don't like raids or the concept of raiding where it's like beyond 10, or in Destiny cases, I think it's like 3. It's like very small party sizes. They kind of just completely destroy the term rating in that game. I like variable difficulties. Like you go from, your normal mode, which is sort of like a story, then you go up a mode and it's more bosses and it's harder, and then you go up a mode and up a mode and up a mode until you eventually reach the very top mode. As far as questing goes, I think that with an open-ended gameplay style that I mentioned earlier, I would like a main story quest of some sort that could sort of tie you with different factions, give you reputation with certain factions, so when you meet them later on in the game, as you just adventure and just go out throughout the world, they act differently towards you, whether more hostile, neutral, or friendly towards you. Stuff like that. Basically, like SWTOR's main storyline in an open-ended game like that would be fantastic, because that way you have something that you can do that's not open-ended, that is a little bit more linear to sort of get you the hang of everything. But then you can, if you don't want to really do that at the time, you can just go out and do your own thing and still progress your character as fast as you would like without having to be tied to that sort of linearity. The choices are a main factor, because when you have a quest chain that is very story based, but there's really only one story and you don't have a lot of choices to make within that story, it gets very boring very fast. And when it really comes down to it, you don't want to roll another character because you do the same things over and over and over again. You don't have that variability of choice as you would in, say, a SWTOR or other games that have different choices for you to make.
Seems like Zach and I are on the exact same page. Something like Guild Wars 2 with the open-ended, a little more immersion, and a main story kind of threading through it. I'm right there with you, Zach. You take Guild Wars 2 and make it better. That's a great starting point in my book.
Put in SWTOR's story into Guild Wars 2.
There you go. There you go. And a little more open world, so we'll throw some Darkfall in there.
Yeah, way more open-ended.
Leveling, I don't think we really need to talk about. I put it there, but I don't think we need to. I'm fine with leveling. Jason hates leveling, and Zach, it depends on the game.
I mean, yeah, quite honestly, I think there's different ways you could do it. I really like what they did with Legion, where once you hit cap, you level up your artifact, and you just keep getting more and more traits. I think that's great, but I still think there needs to be at least intro levels, at least.
Any other systems you want to talk about?
I think crafting hasn't had any real interesting innovations in the last.
I actually think crafting's gone backwards.
Yeah, it's just the same thing. It's just, here's your meter. You have to get up to crafting. You have to get up to max level like 500 before you ever do anything useful. Otherwise, it's just make 35 swords to get to the next thing.
Yeah, and there are like smaller niche games that do crafting in a very in-depth and interesting way. But like I remember playing World of Warcraft back in like Burning Crusade, right? And you had to find a crafter that had a specific recipe because they had to earn that recipe through something or get lucky or buy it from the auction house or whatever. Like so there was a uniqueness to, all right, Jason hasn't gotten lucky, didn't farm this thing, didn't want to do this achievement or this hard thing to go and get this, and I did, so I'm going to get some crafting business where Jason's not going to. Now it's just like every game I play, even Final Fantasy, if you level it up, for the most part, and Final Fantasy does this a little bit differently with the multi-star recipes at the end, there is some uniqueness, not in do you have the ability to craft it, but can you actually execute it, which I do like Final Fantasy XIV doing. It does create a uniqueness in crafters still. But other games, it's like everybody gets the same recipes, and I think it's actually sliding backwards.
I'm not all that upset about that. I'm just like,
I like that.
What I'm talking about is when I get to like, I'm like level 20 in a game, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'll start looking at crafting now. And I go and I can make a sword that's going to have like 1/3 the DPS of what I've got already. So why do I care? I have to make 30 swords to get to something where I can make something that'll have half the DPS, 30 more of those to get something where I can make 3/4 of the DPS. And finally, I can get to, it's just another leveling grind.
Yep.
It doesn't matter until you get to the end.
The whole problem with crafting is in the end game, a lot of crafting in games is worthless. There's a lot of like games that just have crafting there, and you're like, why is this even here? The gear is terrible compared to what I can get in a dungeon by running it for like 30 minutes to an hour. Like it's really a sad thing where within Albion, I'm looking forward to that game because it's all based pretty much around crafting and PvP and building your character up through the different types of things you want to focus on, and based off of how you're able to gather based off of the risk and reward factors of different areas of the game that have PvP enabled and don't have PvP enabled. So you might get killed over, trying to gather a really high tier resource, where someone who has like a guild that's going around that has sort of like protectors is not going to have that issue. It's going to create an interesting dynamic, and I think games need a bit more of that, where people are more specialized in crafts rather than just sort of it being an extra thing. And that's something that very few games do. RuneScape does it well. Albion's going to probably do it really well from what I've seen. Darkfall does it really well. So it's a very... it's an issue because a lot of the mainstream games are pushing it backwards, but there's a lot of more niche games that are sort of trying to push it back into the limelight. So.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, Albion not going to be free anymore. At least for the first year.
Yep.
All right, let's slide over to the weekly bums. Before we do that, let us know what you think of some of these systems in your favorite MMOs. Even if it's a niche game and you want to tell us about a super awesome system in some other game, throw it in the comments below with your weekly bombs. Let's get started with ours. Zach, you're up first.
I'm going to give a bomb to Hi-Rez and Paladins. I played the open beta a good bit already, and from a game that had potential, had a solid foundation in its earliest closed beta, to now, it definitely has improved a lot. Very similarly to how Smite developed over time. From early on, that game, it had potential, but it was very, very rough around the edges. And then as the game developed more and more and more, it came to meet its potential and just be a very great game. So I'm very happy with Paladins thus far.
Jason.
I'm going to give a da bomb to the new title, the new online game coming from Amazon Game Studio. I mean, it looks incredible, but I really wonder about its chances of succeeding in such a crowded market. There's a lot of that type of game out there. So they're really going to have to do some work to stand out. They're going to need more than just the big Amazon name and other big names behind it. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes along.
I'm going to go... Oh, God, sorry.
You didn't even get that? Oh, it hasn't even been revealed. It's going to be revealed in like 4 hours.
Yeah.
But I figured that's, standard. Yeah. Okay. When I have to explain the joke, man, it's just not as good.
IHOP. That's all I have to say. IHOP. Double to the plan Skyforge has for the Ascension expansion. It keeps sounding better and better, and like what players have asked for. Now, will it actually be implemented well? That's where we have to watch. And an A-bomb to Riders of Icarus for delaying the Rift of the Damned patch. Not the Damned patch. It's Rift of the Damned patch. For a second time. It was supposed to come out today. After it was supposed to come out yesterday. They announced the delay from yesterday to today, a few days ago, and then late last night we're like, hey guys, when you wake up tomorrow, that patch ain't gonna be ready. We'll see you October 5th. So A-bomb to them. From the viewers, UDK Face, he says, question for the MMO bomb crew, if Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were MMOs, what MMOs would they be? Oh my God. I'm gonna go with shitty Facebook browser games. Anybody else have an opinion there?
I was just thinking Donald reminds me of Baron's chat, but anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. Hillary reminds me of like Black Desert or Arcade. It looks great on the surface, but when you really get into it, it's not good at all.
Our choices suck, rest of the world. Please, I'd say feel sorry for us, but, we kind of deserve it, I guess. Go ahead, Zach.
Zaberfang X says, many people get fooled by the numbers. I'm still fighting with people thinking that there's 5 million subscribers in Final Fantasy XIV. People get fooled easily, and that is why MMO companies still do it. Marketing for the win.
Mm-hmm.
Echoed our sentiments from last week. Go ahead, Jason.
Tajay Worthington says, Dub-Bomb for Battle Right. The first look really intrigued me and I've been hooked on ever since, though I can't get past grade 6. I'm still having fun with it. All right.
Yeah. Jason, have you played yet? I mean, that just really seems like your type of game.
It does?
Yeah, I thought you'd like that.
I told you, I played like
two and three. And...
No, I got to play in a big match so that I can be the crappy one and nobody will know. If it's 2v2, they're going to know how awful I am.
Well, Fredo Rivera says, A-bomb to any publisher who brags about a false player base. It's like bragging about junk size. Until someone sees it, no one's going to believe you. Cynicism for the win.
Except Zagerfang X's friend who believes it, so.
5 million strong. Bragging about junk size. I'm debating on whether or not to tell a dick joke. It's a good joke, but maybe I should skip it.
Hey, maybe later.
Go ahead, Zach.
Elusive X Treasure says, massive A-bomb to Rift. No, that's not fair, Rift. I still love you, but massive A-bomb to the Defiler rework. They took a soul out that could be support, healing, and DPS, had a unique way of doing so, and turned it into an uninspired dot DPS, and that's coming from someone who loves dot classes. I know it was changed due to rating. I don't dispute that it needed to be changed, but changing it in this way is what I don't understand. My Defiler was my second most played character, considering that I have 2 nearly full accounts of characters, and the worst part was that I had taken a break and didn't even know they were changing Defiler. I knew about Saboteur and Paladin, but this I went into blind. I saw the announcement on the launcher, thought, oh, cool, and after fiddling around with it and enjoying the changes to other 2 souls, I logged onto poor Vi, pulled up the soul tree, and just gasped at it. Offensive soul? What? Where's foul growth? Where's my links? I spent well over an hour trying builds with it, trying other souls. I finally settled on an Oracle Deviler hybrid. At least I could still be a support this way, but was so disheartened that I logged out, looked at my husband, and said with a sigh, I don't know if I even want to play her anymore. Sigh. I think I'll go play EverQuest for a while. At least I know my froggy monk is still a froggy monk. Yeah.
Hell hath no fury like a gamer whose character system was changed.
Seems like they completely changed it from that
Yeah,
comment.
they did. And Elusive X Treasure
Crazy.
knows what she's talking about when it comes to Rift. So if you made her unhappy, then try on Jesus.
Crazy.
Come on.
Yeah.
Question of the week last week. What do you think of RuneScape's banned account item selling idea? Why? And would this work better or differently in a different game? And I did put an annotation on this one because after we recorded the cast, we still had speculation on some of this stuff where was it going to be an always in the game thing? And they said it's after the cast we found out it was going to be more of an event thing. And somebody commented, did I put it in here? If I didn't... no, I didn't, so I'm going to just comment on it now. Somebody yelled at us, Jason, for not letting people know that it was going to be, you had to buy these things. They thought that we just presented as you could... I don't know what
Did
they
we say that?
We
buy with real money?
Yeah, we even went through the currency investigation that we had. So, yeah, you are coughing up in-game currency to buy these things.
In-game currency. Okay,
in-game
currency.
I don't know. Gesley says, I have a really old RuneScape account, and I played it when I was 13, 14 years old. Now I'm 26. I do log in time to time to check what's new, change passwords, etc. Usually I don't use simple passwords. Even my email was just for games, and so silly. How can they even guess such emails? You can tell it in-game. I like to return for a 1-month subscription and take a break for a while. I even have a bank PIN. I did not log in for 1.5 years or so, and when I did log into my account was hacked, and my friend's account too. I wanted a fresh start, so I created a new account, played for a month or two, and after some time, even that account got hacked. Both times, bank and character was clean from valuable stuff and gold. Jagex said they won't return stuff and gold back, and my childish brain was thought that Jagex was somehow selling my inactive accounts. But my friend said, get over it already. So for me, it makes me sad that someone's enjoyment for hurting hackers even more don't think about players who have been hacked and their stuff was never returned, and now they're selling potentially lockboxes with my friend's stuff and or gold. And I believe that there were tons of players with the same experience. It's a bit sad, but I still check what's new in there, and I've added an authenticator on the account as soon as it was available. And I think that's something we mildly alluded to, Jason, but really didn't talk about, was Zach potentially getting his stuff sold by Jason, who hacked his account, took all of it, and then Jason got banned. So, yeah, that definitely would be an unfortunate side effect of a system like this. Go ahead, Zach.
Maslam 4 says, just thought of way how broken that RuneScape loot box is. Make bot account to exploit the system, then buy back with main account via its account lockbox.
Somebody's gonna job the system. I mean, every system gets.
But do you actually know whose stuff it is? Because I mean,
No.
it's not like if I get banned.
It gives you some basic information as far as like how long they've played, maybe what they're banned for, and what they seem to like to do a lot. So it's not like you see Jason Winters banned account.
Yeah, so you might be able to make your own new account and buy your stuff back, which you might not get. You don't know. So.
And creating a new account, you probably don't have the in-game currency to
Sure.
purchase said.
Well,
account.
then you go to your other accounts that have been caught for hacking or buying, of them send it to you.
Go ahead,
Anyway.
Jason.
Father J says, I mean, not like the band players are going to use it anymore, although maybe doing a giveaway would have been better. So at least those newbies or those without much cash can get a chance at it.
And I think that's what we were just talking about. There's exactly why they wouldn't let the newbies have a shot at it. Also, another update on this thing. For some reason, the team at Jagex said that this would not impact the economy at all, which was something we were concerned about. And I still don't necessarily understand or agree with the full logic, but that's what they say.
I mean, if it's sort of a gamble of what you're getting, it's kind of like Storage Wars, where you look at like a storage unit. You don't know exactly what's there until you actually buy it. You could sort of look into it, but it's not like you can actually dig through all the stuff. So I think that's what they sort of mean, where you could buy an account that has like worthless crap on it, where another account is a gold mine. So it probably balances itself out, I would assume.
Go ahead, Zach.
Usango says, I think
Use and
Use
go.
and go.
I always just combine everything because there's no spaces.
What was the
What was
last
the one I did last
Yeah,
week?
what was last week's? Go ahead, Zach. I gotta look up last week's real quick.
Use and Go says, I think Bank Bidders is a good event-based idea. Since you peoples forgot to mention that you have to pay for the stuff that you get, so it's not a free get some botters botted items event. Hilariously, you guys missed that point, and
No, we
as
didn't.
always, removing in-game currency from the flow is a good thing, so peoples have more reason to make money. Ergo, this makes the system rotate more. Of course, admins must check the bank that they are putting to bidding that doesn't include millions of giga rare items materials that are obviously hacked.
Yeah, we did not forget the currency. Go back and take a look at that one. Go ahead, Jason.
All right, Yami Kami.
Oh, and it was
Randy's price tag.
Randy's price tag, which you pronounced as Randy's price tag.
You guys got to use spaces in your usernames or underscores, anything. It's like Yami Kami. He's got a space there. I can get that.
Yeah.
I don't go Yamik Amy or something, you know? All right.
He or she, no clue.
All right. Yami Kami says, my opinion is, who actually cares about stuff that happens in RuneScape? But the idea is kind of super fun. LOL and MOBAs in general should do that too. You can get cheap characters and skins that way. Yeah, that's why they won't do it.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Fredo Rivera, question of the week. I don't know why, but I keep hearing General Akbar screaming, "It's a trap!" when I think about this. Are the devs going to remove items that were obtained by dubious means, or have some kind of way to know that you earned it fairly? Too many questions, not enough answers. I agree. All questions we brought up on last week's show. Go ahead, Zach.
Mikari says, the RuneScape thing, I think, is an in-game money dump since it's basically worthless anyways.
Question of the week for next week. What would you change about some of the systems we discussed earlier? Which games do it best? How would you add to it? Tell us your favorite parts of MMOs out there and smush them all together in one if you want to. Until next week, Zach, where can everybody find you?
Everyone can find me on Twitter at Zach Sharps. I've been streaming a bit more, and I always link to my stream, which is usually on YouTube. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, you might get random content thrown in your faces.
Jason.
I don't want content in my face, and that could really hurt. Find me on Twitter at Winter Informal, streaming at twitch.tv/JasonWinter.
I'm Mike Byrne, aka Magicman. You can follow me on Twitter at Magicman1, MAGICKMANN1, or come on over to MMOBomb.com. Check out all the great articles, videos, giveaways, tons of freaking giveaways right now over on the site for all your free-to-play information. Until next week, gang, stay safe. We'll see you on the servers.